Michael Robinson was born and raised in a small town in northern Ohio. His father was a wealthy farmer who was very proud of the fact that he was a self-made man. Many years ago, Donald Robinson bought an uncultivated piece of land with the last of his money and built a wooden fence around it, while his neighbors made fun of him for it. The determined man already had 3 sons at the time. The youngest son was named Michael. No one would have believed that in just a few years, Donald Robinson would manage to turn that miserable piece of land into a prosperous farm that would provide jobs for several hundreds of local residents. It was hard, diligent work and unwavering belief in himself that helped the farmer achieve success. Thus, the Robinson family managed to achieve the kind of success that they could only dream of before. Over time, Donald's farm became one of the main suppliers of produce, not just in Ohio, but outside of its boundaries too. To the surprise of many, the money didn't spoil the successful farmer whatsoever, and his heart remained kind and hopeful. More than anything in the world, Donald Robinson loved his sons, Trevor, Frank, and Michael. Of course, the farmer tried to treat his children equally, but it just so happened that the youngest turned out to be his favorite. The older brothers picked on Michael, calling him a weakling and a daddy's boy. They probably didn't like their younger brother because they believed he spent way too much time with their father, who would have long conversations with him and told him all about the intricacies of running the farm. When Michael grew up, he went to college, while his older brothers enjoyed a luxurious life, squandering their parents' money. Frank and Trevor never even thought about the fact that one day they would have to take their father's place and take over the farm business. However, when Charlotte Robinson got ill, the elderly farmer realized that the time had come to make his will. Mr. Robinson's main goal was to provide a good life for his children, make sure they never had to encounter problems that he had to face in his youth. This is why the elderly couple invited a lawyer over to their house to help them write up their will. The eldest son, Trevor, would get the farm with thousands of livestock, poultry, and acres of land for future cultivation. The middle son would get hundreds of acres of already cultivated fields, agricultural equipment, the parents' house, and a small gas station by the city's entrance. Carefully documenting the spouse's wishes, the lawyer nodded approvingly, understanding that the property bequeathed to the older sons was split fairly, had equal value, and didn't infringe on their rights. But when the lawyer learned what Donald Robinson bequeathed to his youngest son, he felt uneasy. At first, the lawyer thought that he had misheard the man, but the elderly farmer repeated himself, which cleared up the lawyer's doubts. "And to my favorite youngest son, I'm leaving a car, which I purchased at a flea market on the day I met his mother. Michael is a great mechanic and can feel the engine with his heart. I'm positive that my son will be able to fix my Chevrolet and get it back to its original condition," said Donald Robinson, enunciating each and every word clearly. "What? Sir, with all due respect, are you really only leaving your youngest son a used car?" asked the lawyer, confused. In response to this, the elderly farmer laughed and then said, "Yes, my decision is final and irrevocable, and I don't intend to discuss it again." The surprised lawyer expected Mr. Robinson to laugh out loud, saying that everything he just said was just a joke. But when the farmer and his wife signed the official document, the lawyer realized that everything that he had just said was true. Understanding that he had no right to judge his client's actions, Stephen Taylor put the paperwork into a folder and said a polite goodbye. Of course, in all his years of work, the man had seen his share of strange client requests, but he just couldn't make sense of what Donald Robinson was doing. How was this possible? Leaving the 2 older brothers rich and making the youngest one poor, thought Mr. Taylor resentfully on his way back to the law firm. 3 years flew by, during which the Robinson couple passed away, one after another. Before his death, the head of the family was able to say goodbye to his sons, who had always been his whole world. Sadly, Frank and Trevor weren't particularly sad about their father's passing, as they had now been waiting for several months to become the rightful owners of his empire. It was only Michael who had a hard time dealing with his father's death, as they had always been very close. Moreover, in order to be able to take care of his sick father, The young man dropped out of college, where he only had 1 year left until graduation. But when the family lawyer paid a visit to the Robinson family home after the father's death and read out the will, Michael felt uneasy. How is this possible? Trevor and Frank got everything, and me? I just got an old Chevrolet, which has been collecting dust in the garage for several years now, thought Michael, feeling hurt. The young man welled up when he saw the happy faces of his older brothers, who got such valuable things from their late parents. Well, Michael, are you ready to leave the farm in your old rattletrap? Or maybe you should call a tow truck instead? Frank asked mockingly. Michael looked at his brother and then lowered his head and walked to the garage, where his inherited Chevrolet was. Behind him, he heard the mocking laughter of Trevor and Frank, who had decided to throw a huge party to celebrate getting their inheritance. Of course, the old car wouldn't start. Moreover, Frank made it quite clear to his younger brother that his presence at the house was now highly undesirable. Poor Michael had no choice but to pack his things and go to a motel, so that he wouldn't have to spend the night outside. But when the man left the farm, he saw the family lawyer, who waited for him by the exit to the highway. I'm sorry, Michael. I really couldn't do anything about it. It was your father's will. But Mr. Robinson didn't just leave you the old car, said Stephen Taylor with guilt in his voice. Well, what is it? Another wreck on wheels? Or did father leave me something even more messed up? Asked Michael sarcastically. No, it's money, Michael. $50,000 to fix up the car, explained the lawyer and handed the young man a packed envelope. Nodding his head, Michael took the money and slipped it into his pocket. It was only at the motel that the man noticed that apart from the money, the envelope also had a note which had further instructions handwritten by his father. Upon seeing the familiar handwriting, Michael felt an overwhelming sense of inner peace and got to reading it right away. In his lengthy letter, Donald Robinson suggested that his son fix up the old Chevrolet with the money that he had left him. Then Michael was instructed to head to the car fair in Detroit, where he could sell the car. The note also said that if Michael wasn't happy with the price they'd offer at the fair, his father recommended heading to New York to the annual car auction. It looks like Trevor and Frank were right after all. At his advanced age, father seems to have lost touch with reality. What madman would buy this rattletrap? Thought Michael bitterly. Several days passed. Despite the fact that Michael was hurt by what his late father did, he still decided to fulfill his last will. To make it happen, the young man stayed in his father's garage from dusk till dawn, taking apart the Chevrolet's engine. Frank and Taylor mocked their younger brother the entire time he was working on the car. Michael, take this rusty wreck to the dump and forget about it, said Trevor, who disliked any kind of technology and mechanics since childhood. But Michael wasn't about to give up so easily. Covered in engine oil and grease from head to toe, the man continued working on the Chevrolet, replacing the old parts with new ones. Only after a month of hard work, back-breaking work, was Michael finally able to start the car. Releasing a ring of black smoke from its exhaust pipe, the Chevrolet jumped and then slowly started moving forward. Sitting at the wheel of the rare car, Michael felt joy for being able to bring it back to life, even though it was considered a useless wreck. Now, the young man needed to get to Detroit to the car fair. Unfortunately, none of the potential buyers were able to offer more than $2,000 for the Chevrolet. Oh no, I spent nearly 10 times that amount just to repair it. I'd better go to New York, as father told me to do in his will, thought Michael, clenching his fists. Of course, as he headed for the annual car auction, the young man was very afraid of being laughed at for his Chevrolet, which has been around since the first Indochina era. But when he got to New York, his car immediately attracted the attention of wealthy collectors. During his trip to the auction, Michael had already gotten offers to sell his Chevrolet for about $1 million. Imagine his surprise when by the end of the auction, the final price was set at $5 million. It was only then that Michael understood his father's intention. He left his son an incredible inheritance, only in a rather unusual way. Donald Robinson knew that his older brothers were used to living a rich lifestyle and wouldn't be able to breathe new life into the Chevrolet. And so it was Michael who was given this gift, which, when treated properly, was able to make its owner a true millionaire. The young man used the money he made from selling the Chevrolet to start his own business that he had dreamed of for the past several years. Meanwhile, Frank and Taylor couldn't figure out how their younger brother turned from a poor dropout into a millionaire. Looking at his brothers, Michael realized that sooner or later, they would go bankrupt and inevitably lose their father's entire fortune. 3 years later, Donald and Charlotte Robinson's youngest son got married and continued the dynasty of his parents, who did everything to give their sons all the most important things in life.